aware of that for GDPR purposes. So I will now hand over to Andrew. It's very nice to see you, Andrew. And I hope everyone is well with you in the embassy.
Thank you very much. I'm touching wood. We are so far okay. We've been very blessed with a very, very low rate of infection in the embassy. So we're hoping that continues despite the high rate of problems in Bucharest. But touching wood, all going well so far. Thank you. And it's really good to have this opportunity. My word, at the end of the year, is it really already the end of the year? It's there's something odd about the timescale of this year. One would assume it's all dragged appallingly, and yet it seems to have gone quite quickly in some bizarre ways. It is pretty odd to find ourselves in December. I'm very, very sad that it's meant a year in which our contact with all of BRCC's members and with many other people has been either online or almost non-existent, and actually seeing people in 3D is still a delight because actually one sees so few people. So I'm glad to have this opportunity to sort of help wrap up a problematical year and to look forward to a year that hopefully is going to be kinder to us. I mean, the year started so well. We were on with the planning for the anniversary of 140 years of the bilateral diplomatic relationship, which happened in February. There was a royal dinner planned at Peleș Castle that we had been, some of us had been invited to celebrate it, and suddenly that was off. We had been planning to carry on what we started exactly a year ago. If you remember, we had our conference on 30 years of freedom, and we had planned that the 30th year of freedom would be ways in which we would try to express that. And suddenly, for us, I think it was the 12th of March when the shutters came down, we went into total lockdown with everybody else in Bucharest, and suddenly stopped, our normality stopped. And certainly we as an embassy were almost fully engaged in looking after British citizens in Romania who suddenly found themselves here but didn't want to be here, but couldn't get out because there were no flights, and mapping what we at that stage thought were terrible figures in Romania, though of course they were even worse figures in the UK. Now, of course, we continue with actually quite a lot of our effort is going into COVID-19, but it's a very different sort of occupation now, especially since we're looking at the vaccination phase, and the campaigning against the anti-vaxxers, which is something that I hope we will be very much involved with next year. For all of us then, social contact dropped, family contact dropped, we stopped traveling. I've hardly been anywhere in Romania this year. It really does feel like a lost year in that respect. And I can't remember what a restaurant is. I know I could go to them if I wanted to, but there is also that personal responsibility that we all have of only doing the things that are really worth the risk, especially if the risk is passing infection on to other people and potentially people who can cope with it less well. So I make no apology for the fact that the embassy has had a very conservative approach, if you like. We were very busy in the summer. I knew that the summer would be the period that we would look back on as the period of relative freedom from the restrictions, and so it has proved to be. And we put a lot of our effort into helping people who needed the help as a result of the lockdown. And we did 6 or 7 charity events at the embassy. Charity events that often brought us into connection with the corporate world. And I'm glad to say that we raised over 100,000 euros in those events for charities who were doing vital work, which was even more difficult to do under COVID conditions, and yet whose fundraising opportunities had completely gone off a cliff. So at the middle of the year, we did a bit of good work in that respect. I think there's but I don't want to damn 2020, because I think though there were terrible things about it, there were also some extremely good things about it. Some of them are relatively fleeting, some of them are quite serious and worth preserving. I mean, hands up here if you've read more books in 2020 than you did in the year before. I mean, reading, the rediscovery of reading has to be a good thing. And that's not just a pastime thing. That's actually something about how we realize that our brains work and how we link to others through literary mechanisms. So I think that's a really important thing to have happened. I think we're all much more aware of our fellow citizens in society. Even though we may have been locked away, actually we craved others and we were thinking about others. And I certainly have done, I've had many more conversations with friends around the world than I would have done in a normal year. And so actually our connectivity has been very different, but it hasn't all been negative. Some of it's actually been rather good. And I think it was the not having the prospect of meeting people was the problem. And we had that month after month after month, but month after month after month that we wouldn't have been seeing them anyway. So I think there were some mind games being played with us by this virus that actually we as the more complex organism ought to win. And I think just ensuring that we understand where the positives were. Carbon dioxide emissions are down. Generosity of our fellow citizens completely on display. If you look at the workers in the health system and in the care system, look at the volunteers, look at the charities and what they've had to do to try and stand still and deliver the same service to their very needy clients. Look what teachers have done. I mean, you know, if there's an unsung group of people, it is teachers for whom online teaching is vastly more complex than what they need to do when they have the children in the classroom. So although as parents, we're very much feeling it's much more difficult to be a parent, it's also very much more difficult to be a teacher. And those are people who've really gone the extra mile as well. I think holidays at home. I mean, Romania has been rediscovered by Romanians in the summer, and it was the best season many of the tourist hotspots have had ever. And this time it was Romanians. And so there's something quite good about knowledge of one's own country, and the same applies in the UK and everywhere else. So that was an unexpected positive to come out of it. In the latter half of the year, we as an embassy also really did try to embrace online working as much as we could, and quite apart from the fact that we've substantially all been working at home since March, everybody who can is working from home. But we discovered that we can actually have even greater impact using online systems than we were able to have when we were having meetings in a hotel room in Bucharest. So, and especially on the commercial side of life, I think this is, we are really embracing it, because it gives us a throw weight which is more commensurate actually with the opportunities we're talking about. So, for example, we had a trailblazer, a sort of taster session for British companies interested in the airport's expansion. That is, the plans haven't gone anywhere. They're still there, and the funding is there. And with 17 or 18 airports being redeveloped over the next few years, we were delighted to get Raluca will correct me if I get it really badly wrong, but I think we had 70 British companies who tuned in to listen to us talk about these opportunities. In the past, with people not really thinking about online work and spending half their time in planes anyway, going to one place for a couple of hours of meetings, actually our throw weight was massively increased. And we did the same on smart cities. We ran an English language training course focused on the language of climate change for English teachers in Romania. And we would normally have sent that to 3 centres, and we were actually able to get it used by many more people as a result of the transformation in working patterns. So I think, you know, a little bit like World War I, it was a terrible, terrible event, but a lot of positives came out of it, partly because of the ingenuity of the human mind, and as you can see them on this conference, the quality of the people that we deal with. So in a way, you know, I think it's really important that we don't beat ourselves up about, you know, what a terrible year, because actually just the psychology means that we'll start to think it was terrible and we'll get depressed. Actually, let's really notch up the ways that we put one over on this bloody virus. Oops, I just swore in public. But there was one big thing that we didn't foresee. And even last week we didn't foresee it. All of last week I was thinking, oh, talking about post-Brexit realities on the 14th of December. That'll be fine because we'll know what's what. And of course we don't. We do not know the basis on which the UK and the EU will be trading or engaging in many other aspects of their relationship from the 1st of January. And I can understand everybody who says that this is a type of insecurity about the future, lack of clarity that makes it impossible to plan. I completely agree. I mean, I can also remember the instructions I was having throughout the summer to really get member states to focus on the fact that we needed early decisions. And I can remember talking to the Romanian government about the 15th of October has to be the absolute deadline for a deal, because people need to be able to implement it. Well, I think I'm not going to comment on why that didn't happen. I think there will be some fascinating history books to be read in future epidemics. But I'm not going to get into that now. But here we are on the 14th of December, and the talks are continuing. Now, Neil, you asked me just before we started, you know, what about a deadline? Well, yeah, a deadline, yet again, a deadline has been missed. But deadlines can cut off talks, and then one would be captive to process rather than the issues actually being discussed. And I'm personally, I like the idea of a live line, of actually continuing productive discussions. And I do not have any insight to share. The discussion between the Prime Minister and Ursula von der Leyen yesterday, you've seen it reported, I've seen it reported, I have nothing beyond that. But I can't, as a human being, help but think, well, if it was going nowhere and it could lead nowhere, why extend it? So at a human being level, I find it a hopeful thing that the discussions are continuing, because clearly everybody, almost, well, no, everybody, there's a quotable thing. A very large number of people are convinced that the deal that is being negotiated will provide a much better basis for us going into the future than to leave trading on WTO terms. So let us hope. I mean, this is the British government's strong preference to have that sort of deal, but it has to be a deal which fundamentally does recognise the UK's position as a sovereign nation, where discussing a whole number of issues where we were not sovereign. This is quite difficult for a member state, because they're all issues where the Commission actually led every discussion, and suddenly we're doing it for ourselves. And actually, it seems to me sometimes a little bit like parents letting go of their children. I mean, we know that isn't a perfect comparison for what's happened in Brexit, but here's the Commission, who used to do all this for us, and suddenly one of the children has left the family home and no longer wishes to participate. You can see why there are all sorts of psychological challenges as well as bureaucratic challenges. But even though the fine detail of the relationship is not clear, and I mean, you can object to my use of the term fine detail, it's much more than fine detail. It clearly is the basis for our trade and our aviation links and our law enforcement cooperation. I mean, it is all very big stuff. But even if that isn't yet clear, there are a lot of things that are clear, and on which businesses in particular can and really must make preparations now, because some of the basic facts are very big facts. You know, the UK will not be in the EU. We're already not in the EU, but we are in the transition period, which has extended the impression that we are. But from the 1st of January, we will be out of the customs union. We will be out of the single market. We will not have free movement of people. So there will be new rules on immigration, on customs, on how freight and haulage works, and many other areas of simple business administration that you guys and your finance directors and your logistics people will know far better than me. So, I mean, those are the areas on which we have been working to increase what we're calling readiness. The degree of readiness in the UK is very low. This week I heard somebody quoted as saying it's about 20% of trading companies who know what they need to do, quite apart from what the impact of the negotiations are. We are continuing to work both with people like the Romanian Chamber of Commerce and with the Romanian government. There are two more readiness webinars happening, I think, on the 15th and 16th of December that people can tune into. All of this is advertised on our embassy Facebook page. But the thing that people can do for themselves most is actually quite simple. Because all government services, substantially all government services in the UK, are now delivered through an online platform and have been for a number of years. The most important thing for everybody to do is to get onto gov.uk. That is the government public-facing platform in which all rules and connectivity to everything that you need to do about your relationship with government is included. And gov.uk will tell you what the new customs arrangements are, what you need to do, what you need to do about moving goods between the UK and the EU. It will tell you how the Northern Ireland relationship works with Great Britain and with the Republic of Ireland. So gov.uk, it's written, which I think is far easier than some of the webinars where the speed and regional accents of British civil servants can sometimes get in the way of a proper understanding of what they're talking about. But gov.uk will give you that written instruction of what you need to do and the linkages with which to do it. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, A, because I can't, and B, because if we got into that, many of you would have very different requirements, and we'd take up all the time. But just if I can say as a final section, you know, here I am as a British diplomat. I've been a British diplomat for about 38 years. This is undoubtedly the biggest change in my lifetime in the way that our international relationships are managed. But I'm delighted to say that me personally, I might or might not have liked Brexit, but me personally, as well as professionally, I'm feeling very confident about the way forward. I feel very confident about Britain's place in the world. And Britain is a country that has a place in the world. We don't just have a place in Europe or a place in Northern Europe or Eastern Europe. We are a global actor, and we will continue to be an actor with global perspectives. We have a new confidence about our role on climate change. You know, probably the biggest challenge to all of us. And probably in a year or two's time, the memory of anybody saying, "Oh, leaving the EU was the biggest challenge, biggest change in my professional lifetime," I will probably be corrected by our climate change specialist in the Foreign Office who said, "No, actually, the climate change is the biggest change in your professional lifetime, and now we have to turn it back." And the Climate Ambition Summit that took place over the weekend, and our, I think, real avant-garde role in preparation for COP26 next November in Glasgow. You know, we really do want the nations of the world in their entirety to sign up to some very, very challenging climate targets, which will help. It will help grain growers, it will help people living on small islands, it will help people who don't like being flooded. It will help all of us actually maintain the quality of life that we have grown accustomed to and that 2020 makes us want to get back to. Well, we might need to do the climate change bit as well as the vaccination bit in order to have that security. And the UK is doing a fantastic job on that. In the provision of our collective security, I'm very confident about the British contribution, especially in its relationship with Romania. And 2021 is going to see quite a lot of UK-Romania joint defence activity. You will see our role in understanding that a threat in Southeast Europe is also a threat in Northwest Europe. I mean, it helps that we have submarines and aircraft testing our sea and airspace in the way that you have ships and aircraft testing it here in Romanian space. We share the problems, and we're absolutely committed to the solutions. We just had the biggest increase in defence expenditure since the Cold War in UK history. So I'm very confident that we will continue to front up for our collective security. Our sovereignty is something that gives us an independence of view, which will make us stronger. Clearly, the British role on vaccines as a totem of how good British research is gives us confidence. Our universities are, is it 3 in the top 10? I think it's globally, it's not a bad record. Only the US is better in terms of what's happening in universities. Our education system, I think, as some of the participants on the call know very well, because they are providing British type education in Bucharest and in Romania, is really first class. I cannot count the number of my opposite numbers whose children are studying in London. In fact, the only ambassador I know who doesn't have children studying in London is me, because basically we can't afford London prices. But my colleagues can, so that's a good thing. our role as financial centre for Europe is not challenged by Brexit. That will continue. Our innovation is second to none. And the final point is the quality of the relationship with Romania. It's expanding in almost every area, including in trade and investment. What we really need to grow is the understanding in the UK of what is Romania. You know, it is a country that is extremely badly understood by people who haven't visited here. That will continue to be one of our biggest targets. That, together with fighting poverty. Poverty is our other main lodestar, because it's the problems of poverty and inadequate government services which actually contribute to some of the biggest problems, whether it be in crime or in the image of the country, which holds the rest of the country back. Now, that's nobody's fault, but it is a problem, an identified problem that has relatively easy solutions. They require political will and they require financing. And we're very much hopeful that the new government, when it comes into power, will take the lead so that Romania really does grow to its potential, which is, at the moment, I think we scratch the surface of what Romania is capable of, whether you're looking at the quality of the people, of its natural resources, of its market position, of its industrial and STEM knowledge base. There is so much more to be achieved. So I'm delighted that even having lost a year, I've still got several years left of my time in Bucharest, and look forward to seeing all of you in outside the little box in 3D as soon as the vaccination program will allow. And I'll be getting it almost first of everybody on the call, just on age grounds, which is clearly a good thing. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. We're very pleased to hear that you and all your colleagues are being careful and safe, and I think it must have been an extremely challenging year on many counts, as you've said. This was supposed to be particularly about the new relationship with the EU. I noticed there are a lot of trade deals being announced with other countries. Can you say anything about those?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, our trading relationship with most of the rest of the world was regulated by EU trade deals with those parts of the world. And though there are negotiations going on in a number of countries, some of which are aiming to be new relationships, in the great majority, what we have been able to do is get third countries to agree that our trade, the basis for our trade with them should not change. And so we've now got the bilateral agreement, which gives us the same access and the same fundamentals of our trading relationship with them. And as you say, there are about 20 more coming on stream all of the time. You're muted. No, Neil, you're muted.
Thank you. We've got our first question in the chat box from Raymond Davies. Can you see that? I'll just read it out. Will the UK government aggressively pursue a bilateral trading relationship with Romania on WTO terms, particularly in support of integration of key British SME supply chains with Romania SMEs to exploit regional market capture together throughout the Eastern Europe and Black Sea area?
The short answer is no, because Romania is not allowed to. As I referred to earlier, you know, trade is an area where the Commission has sole competence. So as a member state, you are not allowed to conclude trade agreements or agreements that had anything to do with trade with anybody else. You can't do it with another EU member state, and you can't do it with a third country. So in theory, we could do that, what you suggest, Dr. Davis, with a third country, but we couldn't do it with an EU member state. And not only could we not, because as a matter of law, the member states are not allowed to, but the realpolitik is also such that member states would not try to, because it would destroy their relationship with the Commission and the other member states.
Have you any other questions, please? In the meantime, could I ask a supplementary one? Obviously, your ability to engage with the Romanian government depends upon there being a Romanian government. And whilst the results of the election, I think, could say were disappointing from the point of view of the turnout, can you say anything at this point about how the negotiations appear to be going to form a new government in Romania?
Well, I mean, the government at the moment clearly is the government that we had until the elections, and they continue. And I just sent a Christmas card from number 10 to Prime Minister Ciucă, for the Prime Minister. I mean, negotiations take as long as they take, don't they, of this nature. And my rule of thumb is to take, I mean, though some of my very best friends are journalists, I just need to say that ahead of what I'm about to say. It's a little bit like newspaper reporting about an impending reshuffle of a cabinet. I think it's very interesting to read and really important not to take it as any sign of actual reality, because these tend to be things that are very heavily protected, and I think it's quite interesting to see how the negotiations between the four parties are being talked about, but I will wait until the Romanian equivalent of white smoke goes up a chimney. I mean, I've already reported to London that Ciucă is the Prime Minister and he's likely to remain in a long-term government. Well, you know, my God, 6 hours later, Noble regretted having said that. So I think, you know, the important thing is that they're talking. The maths of the situation is pretty clear, and I don't think any of the parties involved are interested in in another election. I'm sure that they do believe what a lot of commentators were saying was that there has been election fatigue already this year. So I'm sure they all accept that the numbers they came out with are the numbers they have to work with. And if you need to get to 50% plus one, there are only so many ways of doing that. So I'm not expecting results to be wildly outside what any of us are expecting.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat box from Michael McNear. How will law enforcement be affected with the UK and Romania? What will change? Will the current arrangements continue?
Great question. Next question. Oh, you want me to give an answer? Well, we don't know. I mean, law enforcement is one of the areas in negotiation. We don't know whether that's going to continue or whether we have a deal or not. What there is a suite of means to achieve the same sorts of outcomes that usually of pre-existing agreements, i.e. that pre-existed 1973 or pre-existed the development of law enforcement tools by the EU. And so, you know, extradition, I think, will be governed under a Council of Europe system that used to exist. So we'll be able to, I think, the way I've understood it is that we will be able to do everything. But clearly the challenge is going to be quite significant because UK and Romania have been so effective in law enforcement. There's this famous tool of joint investigative teams, and there were more JITs between Romania and the UK than between any other member states. So the quantum of law enforcement work that we are doing with Romania is very significant indeed. But there's also thinking about will we need extra people to be able to deal with systems that might be less easy to work with. But the commitment to maintain that deep cooperation on law enforcement is very much still there. And I mean, one of our, quite apart from the law enforcement side of it, our biggest, I mentioned our priority on poverty. Our focus on poverty is because poverty is one of the biggest drivers of the human trafficking that takes place between Romania and many countries, including the UK. Now, the same people are doing the trafficking as are doing other illicit movements around Europe. So it's not that trafficking is a silver bullet for organised crime, but it is one of the very big commodities and one that has very negative impact across the whole country. So in addition to the law enforcement work continuing, we are increasing our work to encourage a view that a more inclusive Romanian approach, so that every child in Romania can have an education that gets them a foothold in the modern economy. That is of really top importance, that we can't afford to continue to have the rate of school dropout, of illiteracy, and of people simply who don't see themselves as having any role in modern Romania. That sort of an inclusive economy and the social structures to underpin it. If that could all be delivered, we might get the human trafficking rates in Romania to go down to the sorts of rates that they exist in other Central and Eastern European countries. But as long as Romania is more than the sum of all the other Central and Eastern European countries, we're going to have a big problem. So I know I've gone much wider than law enforcement now, but it's not wrong to assert that law enforcement, and which is, in this case, it's picking up the problems that society creates. That really is going to remain at the top of our to-do list.
Thank you, Andrew. And there's also a very good comment from Shahjad in the chat box. Shahjad, do you want to say something about opportunities you're finding in other countries outside the European Union?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Andrew. Everything you've said so far is just actually inspirational. Is that the right word when talking about Brexit? But I think you've given a lot of clarity and a really good balance. So look, just very quickly, we set up a business a few years ago based in Budapest. So we're looking to expand globally. COVID provided an opportunity because our business is related to hygiene. So we thought the best place to run global operations would be the UK, and we hedged there would be a deal. So we didn't think that would actually affect us. But since operating out of the UK, we've struck deals in the USA, Australia, India, Gulf states. We're already up and running in these countries. and we're struggling to be up and running in EU nations. And that's, I mean, it's a long story, but it's down to regulatory approval and red tape and bureaucracy. But a lot of this bureaucracy is pure and utter stupidity. So look, I'm not a Brexiteer. I would prefer not to leave. But I do see the advantages of actually not being in the European Union. And actually, if I dare say, I know it's a small audience, it's a great opportunity to set up a business or set up your base in the UK. Because if you're forward thinking, you want to expand, you can actually do a lot, potentially do a lot more for your business. So that's what we've learned. And we're still going, and we're doing quite well, actually. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Georgia, despite your uber nice comments to me, which I greatly accept, but I'm not sure that I deserve them. Of course, I mean, what you say is true. Britain is a great place to do business. But of course, at the moment, we are still effectively in the EU.
Yes.
So it's not actually necessarily the EU that's the problem. The problem is the way you go about doing business. And we, for, you know, one of the reasons, if I sort of think back over my career, that what are the reasons that have contributed to us leaving the EU? We've always been very, very focused. We've always known that we might have brilliant universities, but unless we can fund the universities, they're not going to be able to continue. And to fund them, well, money doesn't come from anywhere other than business. So business absolutely has been at the very core of everything every British government has tried to do in the whole of the time that I've been working for it. And that is not the case within the EU. So one of the ways in which we've been a bit of an uncomfortable member state is because we've been insisting on the business perspective. The reason we didn't go into the euro was because we could see that its chief attraction was as a political tool. And we always took the view that a currency is actually a real part of your economy. And you should only give it up if you've got something which is as economically strong to go to. And we just didn't think the euro was that. And we didn't think our economy matched our joining the euro. So we didn't do it. So since time immemorial, the ability of business to be successful in its terms is what has driven us. Now, we have tried to get that sort of initiative through into EU policy, and in some areas we have succeeded, but not in all. But we've never managed to make the European Union first about how to make it an economic giant for its population with which to fund everything else. So I mean, Shajad, I never like doing anything other than agreeing completely with you, but I have to sort of out that I think the route is slightly different, but the end point is right. And the UK is a place that does business with the world. And, you know, Australia and India and Paraguay and Mexico are not distant places from us. Not least because that wonderful organization DHL can get you packages anywhere at the drop of a hat for a very moderate fee.
Dan is here, isn't he? I saw him.
He just had to jump off.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm glad I said it in his absence. But you know, it's a global business center, and that's one of the reasons that we're actually very confident about it remaining that, because you can do your business there.
No, thank you. If I can just add one little point, and I think this is interesting for anyone working and operating in Central Eastern Europe, is sometimes in countries like Hungary, where I'm currently in Budapest, it's not a Michael Jackson comment, for those who know the Michael Jackson comment. Anyhow, he was on concert in Bucharest and he said, hello, Budapest. So I'm actually in Budapest. Is governments here take an active role in trying to control successful companies, actually to their detriment. And any aspiring entrepreneur seriously wants to reconsider whether they want to be successful in some countries. And if they do, they want to even stay there. So I know for us and many of my other Hungarian counterparts who have successful companies are simply looking to offshore out of Hungary for fear of government takeovers or government. Yeah, it's another subject. But again, Britain provides a very fair place to set up a business. Enough said from me.
Thank you very much, Shajan. I'd say for myself, this year I've been advising on English law clients based in not only the UK, but also in North America, in South Africa, and in Australia. So it certainly has opened up new opportunities of what we can do online. From the Chamber's point of view, we've realized that we are now able, using the online platform, to reach people in all parts of Romania, in all parts of the UK and beyond. I can see today we have people in the UK as well as familiar faces from Bucharest. So I think it's going to be an interesting new year in what we can do in building on this model and see where we go from here. Andrew, can I ask, have you any resolutions for the new year?
Other than to stick with my age-old policy of not having New Year's resolutions, no.
Okay. That's a very good one.
Sorry,
to start with.
Perfectly nice comment, but no, I always, New Year's resolutions I break within about 3 days. I gave up years ago.
Very wise, I think.
I mean, actually, I also think, I mean, what I actually, you know, the way I do live my life is not to think, oh, let's see if I can have any good ideas about things I ought to do and wait till the 1st of January to start them. I actually generally just try and get on with them. So I didn't have a New Year's resolution last year to lose weight, which was one of the ones that I'd had for many, many, many years. But on the 27th of January, I decided, let's lose some weight, and have done. So, I mean, are there any things that I ought to do differently to what I'm doing now? I think I'll have to think about that in my subconscious and come back to you on a future occasion.
I'm sure I can speak for all of our members who are really pleased with the support you give, particularly to the NGOs that are members of the Chamber. And what you organize and support for them over the summer was fantastic. So thank you very much indeed from them.
Thank you. Well, I mean, here's the thing that I didn't wait for the 1st of January on. You know, I mean, Stan is here. I can't see whether others are on the call, but one of the aspects of this job, which is unique, I think, in Romania, is the presence of 50 or so British origin NGOs who are delivering the sorts of services that they would also be delivering if they were in the UK, which is a very NGO-based society. And they're doing it here, except here they're doing it against the system. And one of the main messages that I've been consistently delivering to everybody that would listen throughout the year is the need for a different legislative base for NGOs. NGOs need to be taken out of the taxation system where they are charitable organisations. And there has to be a distinction made between NGOs who are what we would describe as charities in the UK, and NGOs who are, I don't know, political affiliations who don't actually have charitable aims. And the charities in Romania need to be able to use the money that they're given by us as companies or as individuals. They need to be able to use that money for charitable purposes, not to pay taxes to the government. And the second thing is that the NGOs they're islands of Romania that work really, really well. And if you're looking at the disability sector, for example, and I'm doing a speech later this week about disability, and I look at what are the conditions for the visually and hearing impaired Romanians, I can see that there are things, questions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 out of the 100 most difficult questions, where 1 is the easiest, have still not been answered for all blind and deaf people in Romania. But one place that's got it right is sitting next to you on my screen. What Light into Europe is doing for these people is the right thing. And they are scalable, but they're only scalable if you recognize that they're doing the thing that we need them to do. There are 100,000 blind people who are unable to contribute to the Romanian economy because reasonable adjustments are not being made for them. If the state really wants to make a difference, all it needs to do is to facilitate the work of organisations like Light into Europe, or Hospice, or Children Copii în Dificultate, or Fera, or Hope and Homes, or whoever it is.
Little people.
Little people, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So, and I think that became clearer to me during the crisis. It also became clear to me as somebody being paid a full salary, not in jeopardy of my work, that actually I needed to do more. And I needed to do more both as ambassador, but I also needed to do more as an individual. So I'm not sure how much my charitable giving has increased this year, but I would say it's gone up. I think I've doubled or trebled what I would normally give. And I think that's part of, I suspect, what unites us all. I heard a British company on the radio this morning saying that they'd taken the furlough money, but actually business had boomed and they were now giving back all of the furlough money. And I hope what they're also going to do is increase their CSR expenditure, because the need out there is massive. And I think all of us as moral individuals, and within a BRC, a British Romanian Chamber of Commerce, I can say that very confidently. I'm sure that moral individuals like us will be thinking about, can I afford to do better than I did last year? And if only it's giving a charity the money that you would have given to the restaurants that you would have eaten at in year, I think it's something really to encourage.
Amen to that. I think, to quote a well-known politician currently out of circulation, this is the parallel state. And I think the parallel state, as exemplified by the NGOs, shows how things can work and they're allowed to.
Yeah.
So I hope we can all do more to support that sector. The Chamber will try and do so next year in continuation for this year as well. We're approaching the hour. Have you any other questions, please? I think you've exhausted everyone there, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, if I can just finish with a plug, any British citizens on the call who do not know about it, we've got a call. I'll get the timing wrong now. I think it's 6 o'clock or 6:30 tonight. Again, details on the British Embassy Bucharest Facebook site. Another webinar about UK citizens' rights in Romania, and I'm also planning tomorrow, which you might be interested in. I'm going to do a media interview about things like immigration and visas, and that aspect of life, which is causing a lot of confusion for a lot of people.
Thank you. And I'd say thank you also particularly to Anna and Madalena and Stefan, our colleagues in the Chamber who set up today's event. Most enjoyable. Anna, this isn't our only event this week, is it? What else have we got?
Thanks, Neil. Thanks everyone for attending this. I know we approach the holiday season. However, we still have one event before the new year. That's our traditional networking event, which will be this Thursday morning. Of course, I will also type here the event. So in case you want to learn more and register, just check on the chat box. And of course, you can stay updated watching our social media channels and as well our website. Thank you very much and see you on Thursday.
Thank you. I would wish you happy Christmas now, but I hope I'll see you on Thursday, and I'll do so then. So have a good week in the meantime, and thank you very much again, Andrew, and all of you for your time today. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Neil.